The sight of an empty jewelry box felt like a punch to the chest. I stood in the middle of my bedroom, the faint scent of Henry's cologne still lingering in the air, staring at the polished wooden case on the dresser, its hinges gaping like an open wound. The soft velvet interior, once brimming with memories, now lay bare, robbed of the stories it used to hold. My heart raced as my mind scrambled to understand. Henry! My voice cracked as I called out, gripping the edge of the dresser for balance. Where are they? My jewelry, where is it? He appeared in the doorway, calm and composed, loosening his tie as if this were just another evening after work. His casual shrug made my stomach churn. Oh, that, he said, his tone almost dismissive. I sold it. For a moment the world tilted on its axis. You what? I whispered, though I'd heard him perfectly. Henry stepped into the room, each step deliberate, the floor creaking under his polished shoes. It was necessary, Madison, he said smoothly. The funds went toward an important expansion for my business. This is bigger than us. It's for the empire we're building. I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. My husband, the man who had once slipped my grandmother's ruby ring onto my finger and promised a lifetime of love and respect, now wore the smug grin of a businessman who had just closed a deal. Important. My voice rose as the disbelief gave way to anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those pieces weren't just jewelry, Henry. They were my mother's, my grandmother's. They were pieces of my life. His expression hardened, irritation flickering in his eyes. And now they're funding a future for us, he said, his tone sharp. You should be grateful I'm thinking ahead. Do you know what it takes to grow an empire? Sacrifices, Madison. Sometimes personal ones. Sacrifices. The word felt sour on my tongue. My pulse pounded in my ears as tears threatened to blur my vision. You don't get to decide what I sacrifice, Henry. You had no right. Don't be dramatic, he said, brushing past me toward the closet, clearly ready to end the conversation. It's done. What's more important? A few trinkets gathering dust or ensuring we never have to worry about money again? I didn't answer. Couldn't. The weight of his betrayal was too heavy, and the familiar warmth of our home now felt cold and foreign. My throat burned with unshed tears as I turned toward the empty box again. Those weren't just trinkets. They were milestones, moments, memories, the essence of my family, my roots. As Henry moved about the room, acting as though nothing had changed, I knew everything had. This wasn't about jewelry. This was about trust, respect, and the undeniable chasm that had formed between us. Something deep inside me shifted, a crack running through my foundation. For the first time in years, I wondered if the empire Henry so desperately wanted was big enough for both of us. I sat in the darkened living room long after Henry had gone to bed, my fingers tracing the edge of my phone case. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to storm into the bedroom, wake him up and demand answers, but I didn't. Not yet. Henry might have seen my tears earlier, but he didn't know the storm he'd unleashed. Instead, I focused on the faint hum of the house, using it to steady the whirlwind inside me. My grandmother's sapphire brooch, the delicate gold bracelet my mother gave me on my wedding day, the antique diamond necklace I'd saved for Nate and Olivia to inherit one day. These weren't things you simply sell. They were pieces of my soul. Pieces Henry had stolen. But the thing about stealing from someone like me? You never take everything. My lips twitched with a humorless smile as I opened an app buried deep within my phone's settings. A faint, pulsing glow illuminated the screen. There they were, the tiny tracking devices I'd installed in my most cherished pieces. Henry didn't know about them, of course. He never would have cared enough to notice, just like he never truly understood their significance. The dots blinked back at me, steady and reassuring. 2 pieces were in the city, in the direction of Henry's office. A third, the sapphire brooch, was farther out, moving it seemed. I stared at the map, my anger hardening into determination. Henry had made a mistake. I spent the next hour poring over every corner of the app, refreshing the signals and gathering all the data I could. The pieces might be gone, but they weren't out of reach. Not yet. A plan began forming, the first taste of clarity cutting through the haze of betrayal. The weight of what I was about to do settled over me. This wasn't just about recovering jewelry. It was about reclaiming the control Henry had so effortlessly snatched from me. He thought he could make decisions for me, treat my life and memories as currency for his ambition. He was wrong. I finally turned off my phone, my heart racing as I tucked it into my pocket. My anger was still there, simmering, but now it was sharpened into something useful. It wasn't rage driving me anymore, it was purpose. Before heading upstairs, I stopped by Henry's office, where his expensive Scotch collection gleamed behind a glass cabinet. I'd never been a drinker, but tonight I poured myself a small glass, swirling the amber liquid as the faint moonlight filtered in through the blinds. To sacrifices, I murmured under my breath, raising the glass in mock salute. Mine, not yours. The Scotch burned as it went down, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the decision I'd made. Henry might have started this, but I was going to finish it. The cool leather of the chair creaked as I shifted, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Across the desk, Detective Taylor leaned back, his piercing eyes scanning the photos and notes I'd laid before him. His expression was unreadable, and the silence in the room felt as heavy as the decision that had brought me here. So let me get this straight, he said finally, his voice calm but deliberate. Your husband sold your jewelry collection without your consent, correct? Yes, I said firmly, meeting his gaze. And it wasn't just jewelry, it was family heirlooms, pieces with immense sentimental value. And here, I gestured to the map on my phone, is proof that I can track them. They haven't left the city. Detective Taylor's brow furrowed as he studied the blinking signals on my phone. That's impressive, he said, a flicker of surprise breaking through his professional demeanor. You've done some of the legwork already. I nodded, a small swell of pride pushing back the lingering bitterness in my chest. Henry doesn't know I installed trackers. He thinks they're gone for good, but I refuse to let him get away with this. It's not just about the jewelry. It's about what this represents. My autonomy. My voice. Taylor leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You're saying you didn't give him permission to sell the items? Absolutely not, I replied, my voice resolute. He did it behind my back, and then had the audacity to justify it as some kind of business move. I never signed over ownership. They're still mine. For the first time, Taylor's lips curved into a slight smile, one of quiet respect. You'd be surprised how many cases like this come across my desk, he said, jotting down notes. But not everyone comes in prepared like you. Most people give up before they even get this far. I don't give up easily, I said, the steel in my voice surprising even me. He nodded, pulling a folder from his drawer. We'll start by filing a formal report on the theft. With your consent, we'll also begin an inquiry into Henry's financial records. If he's using assets obtained illegally, whether yours or someone else's, he's in a world of trouble. The word trouble sent a ripple of satisfaction through me. Henry had operated like the rules didn't apply to him for far too long. Taylor's tone softened as he leaned back again. This might get messy, Mrs. Hayes. Reporting a spouse isn't easy, and if we dig into his finances, it could uncover things you aren't prepared for. Are you sure you want to proceed? I hesitated for only a moment, letting the weight of his words settle over me. But then I thought of the empty jewelry box, the dismissiveness in Henry's voice, the years of quiet compromises I'd made to keep the peace. Yes, I said finally, my voice steady and unwavering. I'm sure. Taylor extended his hand across the desk, his grip firm and reassuring. Then we'll do this the right way. Together. As I left the precinct that day, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I had allies now, Detective Taylor, the evidence I'd gathered, and most importantly, the unshakable resolve within myself. Henry had underestimated me, but I was done underestimating myself. I sat at the kitchen table, Detective Taylor's voice crackling faintly over the speakerphone. The sound of rustling papers punctuated his words as he updated me on the investigation's progress. Madison, he said finally, his tone heavier than before, I need you to brace yourself. What we're uncovering isn't just about your jewelry. It's much bigger than that. I gripped the edge of the table, my pulse quickening. What do you mean? What else has he done? Taylor sighed, and I could almost hear the weight of the evidence he was about to share. For starters, Henry has been moving money into offshore accounts for years. He's listed assets under fake corporations and falsified business expenses to hide his gains from the IRS. We're looking at tax evasion on a massive scale. The room seemed to tilt, my breath catching in my throat. Offshore accounts? I echoed, disbelief mingling with anger. That's not all, Taylor continued, his voice steady but somber. There's evidence of embezzlement within his company. He's been funneling funds from investors into personal accounts, all under the guise of expanding his business. And Madison, some of that money traces back to accounts in your name. The blood drained from my face. In my name, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Taylor paused, giving me a moment to process. He's been using your accounts to launder money. Whether he did it to cover his tracks or to make it harder for investigators to pinpoint him directly, I can't say. But it's clear he's been taking advantage of you in more ways than one. The room was eerily quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My mind raced, connecting dots that had once seemed unrelated. The late-night phone calls Henry always took in his office, the cryptic emails I glimpsed on his laptop, the unexplained expenses he brushed off as business necessities. He hadn't just stolen my jewelry. He'd stolen my name, my trust, my life. Taylor's voice broke through my thoughts. I know this is a lot to take in, but we'll do everything we can to untangle this mess and clear your name. For now, I'd advise against discussing any of this with Henry. I won't, I said, my voice flat and cold. He's already taken enough from me. I won't give him the satisfaction of knowing how much I figured out. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the table as a slow, simmering rage built within me. Henry had always talked about his empire like it was a monument to his brilliance, a testament to his vision. But now I saw it for what it was. A house of cards built on lies, theft, and deceit. And I'd been unwittingly holding it up. I thought of the moments when I'd admired him, when I'd supported his ambition, thinking we were building something together. Now I realized that while I had been investing in us, he had been plotting for himself, using me as a pawn in his grander schemes. The realization cut deeper than any betrayal I'd ever known. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor as I moved to the window. The city lights stretched out before me, cold and unfeeling. Somewhere out there, Henry was likely toasting to his latest victory, utterly unaware of the walls closing in around him. For years I'd let him steer our lives, believing in the illusion of partnership. But now I saw the truth. Henry had underestimated me, believing I was too passive, too trusting to ever question his motives. He'd made a fatal mistake. As I stared out into the night, a sense of grim determination settled over me. Henry's empire might have been built on lies, but I was going to be the one to bring it down. The words divorce attorney felt heavy as I typed them into the search bar. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about this moment before. I had. But now, with the weight of Henry's betrayal pressing on me, this step felt both liberating and terrifying. I chose the top result, a firm with glowing reviews and a reputation for handling complex financial cases. My stomach churned as I hit the call button, but my resolve didn't waver. This wasn't just about leaving Henry. It was about reclaiming the life he'd stolen from me. A receptionist answered, her voice smooth and professional. Kindle and Associates, how can I assist you? I need to schedule a consultation, I said, gripping my phone tightly. It's about a divorce. 2 days later, I sat across from Rebecca Kendall, a woman who exuded calm confidence. Her office was minimalist but sophisticated, the kind of space that made you feel your problems were already half solved just by sitting there. I've reviewed the materials Detective Taylor forwarded, Rebecca began, her tone measured. It's clear that your husband's actions go beyond marital misconduct. We're looking at serious financial crimes, some of which implicate you due to the accounts in your name. My chest tightened, but Rebecca raised a hand to reassure me. We'll clear your name, she said firmly. Our first step is to freeze any accounts jointly held with Henry, and secure the ones in your name. You'll need to gather documentation, bank statements, investments, anything you can access. If you suspect he's hiding assets, we'll find them. Her certainty bolstered me. What about the jewelry? I asked. We'll include it in the settlement as marital property wrongfully disposed of, she explained. If it's recovered, you'll have grounds to claim full ownership. If not, we'll pursue restitution. Rebecca leaned forward, her voice softening slightly. Madison, I know this is overwhelming, but taking control is the most powerful thing you can do right now. You've already shown incredible strength by coming this far. This divorce isn't just an end. It's a new beginning." Her words struck a chord, and for the first time in days I felt a flicker of hope. Over the next week, I followed Rebecca's advice meticulously. I gathered financial records, listed all of our shared assets, and created a timeline of Henry's suspicious activities. Each document I scanned and filed was a step further away from the man who had taken so much from me. But it wasn't just about the logistics, it was about the emotions too. I spent hours sorting through my memories, untangling the truth from the lies. The laughter at our anniversary dinners felt hollow now, the expensive gifts more like bribes to keep me complacent. And yet, with each realization, my resolve hardened. One evening, as I boxed up a few of my personal belongings, I came across a framed photo of us on our wedding day. I almost set it aside without a second thought, but something made me pause. In the picture, Henry stood with his arm around me, his smile wide and confident. But it was my face that caught my attention, the hopeful gaze of a woman who believed in the man beside her, who thought she'd found a partner for life. I took the photo out of the frame and slipped it into the shredder, watching as the image disappeared into thin strips. That woman deserved better, I thought, and I was going to make sure she got it. The next morning, I sat with Rebecca as she drafted the divorce papers. When she handed them to me to review, I hesitated for just a moment before signing. "This is it," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done letting him control me." Rebecca smiled. "This is the first step to freedom, Madison. You're taking your life back." As I left her office, papers in hand, a sense of clarity washed over me. Henry might have built an empire on deceit, but I was building something far stronger, my independence. And this time it wouldn't be built on anyone else's terms but mine. The box was smaller than I remembered. It sat on the dining table, its cherrywood finish gleaming under the afternoon sun. I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what it represented. When I finally lifted the lid, my breath caught. The sapphire brooch lay nestled in the velvet lining, its deep blue catching the light like a shard of sky. My grandmother's ruby ring sat beside it, the gold band polished to perfection. Piece by piece, the treasures I thought I'd lost forever were returned to me, each one a testament to my fight. Detective Taylor stood nearby, his arms crossed, a small smile playing at his lips. "We couldn't recover everything," he said, his tone apologetic. "But this is a good chunk of it." "It's more than enough," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Taylor nodded. "Henry's been formally charged. Fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, the list is long. He's looking at significant prison time." I didn't feel joy at the news, just a quiet sense of justice. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "You did the hard part, Madison," he said, tipping his hat slightly before leaving me alone with the box. I sat there for a long time, running my fingers over the jewelry. Each piece felt like a fragment of myself returned, a symbol of the resilience I discovered in the wake of Henry's betrayal. Later that evening, Abigail arrived with a bottle of wine and her trademark enthusiasm. "So," she said, plopping onto the couch and pouring us each a glass, "how does it feel to be the queen of your own life again?" I smiled, the warmth of her support breaking through the lingering weight of the past. "It feels freeing," I admitted. "Scary too, but in a good way." She raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," she declared. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. As we talked late into the night, I found myself sharing dreams I hadn't dared to voice before. Travel, painting, maybe even going back to school to pursue something I'd always loved, but never had the chance to explore. Abigail listened intently, cheering me on with every idea. By the time she left, I felt a quiet sense of hope blooming inside me. The future, once clouded by Henry's shadow, now felt like an open road stretching endlessly before me. I walked over to the empty dresser where my jewelry box had once sat. It had taken me years to fill it with pieces that told my story, and though it wasn't completely full again, I realized it didn't matter. My story wasn't in the jewelry. It was in the fight, the courage to reclaim what mattered, and the determination to never let anyone take that from me again. I placed the box back on the dresser and caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the woman who had been betrayed. I saw someone stronger, Someone who had survived the storm and come out the other side with her head held high. With a deep breath, I turned off the light and walked toward the future. When I was finally ready to write on my own terms.